Critical Role Recap Season 2, Episode 69. Last week, the Mighty Nein continued their delve through this mysterious dungeon full of angel statues crying tears of blood, and various chambers filled with encounters and puzzles for them to solve. They finally made their way through a hall of mirrors where they had to fight mirror images of themselves. They managed to defeat the beasts and found a magical dagger which they slipped into the grasp of a statue of an angel thing, which then caused the doors to open, and that's where we ended last week and picked up this week. The Mighty Nein milled about for a little bit in front of the door, decided to go ahead and identify the item which Caleb had used Frumpkin to pick up on their way across the long chain bridge. He discovered that it was a whip which could be used to grapple something or someone and then pull the object to the wielder, or pull the wielder to the object. They decided that Jester was probably the best fit for this, so she immediately began playing with it by attaching onto a nearby sconce or part of an archway and hang from it for a while. Not and Jester also had a conversation which Not confronted Jester about whether or not she had seen her flask. Jester admitted to taking it and eventually gave it back to Not and explained that she had taken it because she was worried about Not's performance whilst drunk, and Not said that she would sort of attempt to ease up on the drinking in some way. After taking a short rest and identifying the item and having some conversations, the Mighty Nein decide to continue on into the passage through the doorway which they had just opened. Inside, they find a chamber with a staircase on each side that leads down into a main area, and in that central area, they find a sarcophagus lying there. They spend the next few minutes searching the area and trying to figure out what they should do next when Oban appears above them and announces his presence. They have a conversation in which Oban asks why they chased him. They say basically that they're trying to prevent further bloodshed from either side of this war, and that he seems to be some sort of actor in it and is causing trouble, so they wanted to stop him. Oban asks where their allegiances lie and who they're working for basically, and they don't really give an answer to that because they themselves aren't really entirely sure still whose side they're on necessarily in this conflict. Oban then shifts his gaze over to Yasha and once again calls her the Orphan Maker and expresses familiarity with her and says basically, "Thank you for bringing a lost child home to me." Mentions how she had been beside him when they killed many innocents and that he missed having her with him basically. Yasha, whose memory still isn't quite returned, doesn't remember him at all and is not too happy with the familiarity and the implications that this has on who she was before she lost her memory and became the person she is today. Oban also mentions the Angel of Irons, and they try and figure out who that is. They still don't really know. It's just kind of who she is. It seems like she's a god that Oban worships, possibly. Oban also reveals his true form and morphs into a fiend, a winged fiend with red skin and yellow eyes, and starts to fly down to the sarcophagus. At this point, Ford goes ahead and opens up fire on them, and combat ensues. The entire party rolls initiative. During the first parts of the combat, Oban is reading from some sort of tablet, some sort of spell he's trying to cast that we assume is trying to release the thing inside of the sarcophagus, which is bound by chains, which he mentioned is another child to fight by his side. The Mighty Nein attempt to prevent him from reading by using various crowd control spells, but none of them quite manage to land due to high rolls. Eventually, he does manage to finish the incantation, and the chains snap off, and the sarcophagus breaks open as a creature emerges. From inside of the sarcophagus comes a 10-foot tall hooded creature whose right arm is just a sword blade, essentially, and he is this hulking, massive, powerful beast that when they do damage to him, it doesn't seem to really take much effect. He does get wounds, and then eventually his wounds get teeth and form into mouths and begin laughing hysterically, and we've learned that the name of this creature is the Laughing Hand. The Laughing Hand summons out a couple of shadow hounds, so they have to fight against Oban, the Laughing Hand menace, as well as these shadow hounds, and the party quickly realizes that they are outmatched by the Laughing Hand and decided it's their best bet to try and escape from combat. Prior to doing that, they do decide to take down Oban, which they manage to narrowly finish him off completely. However, when he dies and turns into a ball of goop, as fiends are wont to do, apparently, he says to Yasha, "Avenge me," And then Yasha fails a wisdom roll and basically switches over to the side of the Laughing Hand and starts to attack the Mighty Nein. When Ford uses Thunderstep to bring Yasha with him, she is an unwilling creature, so she does not comply, and they begin to make their way out of the chamber. Yasha continues to attack them as they attempt to escape, and they go ahead and pull the dagger out from the grasp so that the doors begin to close. Eventually, they do all manage to get out. Ford gets knocked down to 0 health, but uses his Orc Racial to come back up at 1 health, and they all manage to narrowly escape as the doors close. They attempt to grab Yasha one last time with Jester's new whip, but she rolls a natural 1 and misses. So the doors close with the Laughing Hand and Yasha sealed off from the rest of the Mighty Nein. The doors immediately begin to shudder under the weight of the Laughing Hand attempting to smash through the barrier, and the Mighty Nein decide that it's their best bet to just run the hell out of there as quickly as possible and to shut every door behind them that they can. On their way out, they have to deal with all of the issues that they ran into on their way in. However, this time they're much more prepared for the fights. In some cases, they have nullified much of the threat. So they make their way back through the bridge and they tie everyone together to make their way back over the bridge. And then they go up the tower with all the misty invisible creature in it, but however it doesn't have the lightning coursing through it because they deactivated that aspect of it. They end up killing the misty invisible creature in a couple rounds of combat and then continue on their way past, make it through the undead chamber as well as the spider chamber, and close a couple doors on their way out, and eventually exit and find themselves once again outside breathing fresh air, deciding what the hell they should do. They gather up their moorbounders and begin making their way back to the town. Their plan is to get some sleep and recover, as all of them are very beaten up and have almost no spells available to them. In the morning, they plan to contact the Bright Queen, tell her that they killed Oban, but they failed to prevent him from releasing this new threat. Caduceus mentions the forge and thinks that it's somewhere near and says maybe that they can find help there. So they have a few loose plans in mind at the moment, but Ford is really hesitant to announce their failure because he's worried that they'll get locked up. So basically the Mighty Nein is in a bit of a disarray, and they currently have no real plan for getting Yasha back. That ends this week's episode as far as the Mighty Nein is concerned. So Matt has all of them leave the room except for Yasha, who stays back, and he explains to Yasha how she's feeling fear and anger at the same time and feels like she's viewing herself doing all these things, but there's also a part of her that thinks, well, maybe this is just the real me. She has been taken over completely by this rage, by this dead creature, whom she gathers up some of his ichor, and Matt says that Yasha still feels the throbbing presence of Oban, so we think that there's a possibility he might be able to get resurrected somehow. But for now, she basically just helps the Laughing Hand smash through some of the barriers as they begin making their way out into the world. And we are told that this is where Yasha's story comes to a close for now, with further updates to come, because Ashley is going to yet again be away from the players' table, and so this time her character will not be piloted by other people, and instead the story gives reason for why she has disappeared from the group. And that's pretty much the end of the episode. So next week, there will not be an episode. The next episode will be on July 9th, I believe. We'll pick up with the Mighty Nein figuring out what to do about this new creature and coping with the at least a temporary loss of Yasha. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.